Hi, in this video I'm going to be focusing on teaching you about how energy pyramids represent how energy moves through a food chain and how the 10% energy rule works with energy pyramids. So as a review, remember that all living things need energy to survive. Either the living thing can make their own food using the sun's energy, like plants, or the living thing will eat other living things for energy. They could eat the plant or they could eat an animal or an organism. And remember, we did a food web activity with string to see how the energy from the sun gets passed on to plants, which gets passed on to herbivores and omnivores and carnivores, and it makes one big food web, which connects all kinds of living things. Now, let's talk about what an energy pyramid is. An energy pyramid is a representation. It's a model, and what it does is it represents the amount of energy that's available to different types of living things in an ecosystem. So pretend we have a food chain here. A food chain just shows the relationships between different animals, and then if you were to take this food chain and put it in a food pyramid, not only would you understand the relationship between these animals, you would also understand how much energy is available for each of these living things here. Pyramids are wider at the bottom and small at the top. That means that there's more energy down here and less energy up here. It's supposed to represent that through the shape. Let's talk about what a trophic level is. The energy pyramids are divided into different levels, as you can see here. These levels are called trophic levels, and usually each trophic level consists of organisms that have similar eating habits. So on the bottom, we have our first trophic level right here. We have producers. Producers are plants or other organisms that are able to do photosynthesis and make their own food. In the next level, right above the producers, we have our second trophic level, which consists of our herbivores that usually eat the producers. So they're right above the producers because that's what they eat. Above the herbivores are the carnivores or omnivores, or the secondary consumers that feed on the level below it. So these herbivores get eaten by these carnivores or omnivores. And at the very top, we have the tertiary consumers, which are the organisms that eat the carnivores or omnivores that are here. So you can see the pyramid, the way it works is it's stacked in the order of the food chain. So this secondary level eats the primary level, the third level eats the second level, and the top level eats the level below it. And on the very bottom, it's not part of the pyramid, but it's part of the bottom because these are the decomposers. Decomposers will eat the dead things and wastes of all four levels. So that's why it's at the very bottom and not part of the pyramid. Okay? All right. So here's how the energy pyramid works. Energy gets passed from the sun to the producers at the bottom. The producers will pass it to the herbivores will pass it to the carnivores, and the carnivores will pass it to the top predator. That's how energy flows through an energy pyramid, and that's how it represents the energy. Now, why exactly are we using this pyramid shape is the next question. Well, the pyramid shape actually represents the amount of energy. So it's a great way to show how energy actually decreases as you go up the pyramid. So we're going to learn about how the amount of energy that's in the plants is very different from the amount of energy that's available to the top predators. Generally, as you go up the pyramid, the amount of energy decreases. So as you can see, the plants have the most energy, and as the plants get eaten and these predators eat the herbivores, as you go up the pyramid, there's less and less energy available. And this is actually, there's a rule called the 10% energy rule. And basically, this rule states that at each trophic level, only 10% of the energy gets passed to the level above it, and 90% of that energy gets lost as heat or gets used up by the organism for survival. So this might sound a little confusing, but I'm going to walk you through an example to help you understand it. Just know that the 10% energy rule means that only 10% gets past each level, and this graphic really represents it well when it shows the 10% and the arrow going through each level of the pyramid, and these arrows represent 90% of the energy being lost. All right, so let me explain this in more detail. So let's take a look at this picture. All energy on the earth originally came from the sun. Okay, so here's the sun. It's shining energy going towards the plants. And the plants are the only ones who are able to take the sun's energy and create food. Animals can't do that. Animals have to eat other animals or plants for energy. Okay, but plants have the amazing ability to photosynthesize. So the producers are going to do their photosynthesis to produce food, and the plants will convert some of that food into energy, okay, using cellular respiration. The plant will use 90% of that energy to stay alive, to do things like grow, to function, to reproduce. It needs 90% of that energy just to stay alive. The rest of the 10% that's left is going to be made into plant tissue and fruit. And those are the things that are going to get eaten by the primary consumers in the level above it. So the primary consumers are actually eating only 10% of the energy that was originally captured by the plants. So once the primary consumers eat the plants, then the primary consumers are going to use 90% of those calories from the plants to stay alive. So it's going to use 90% of the energy from the plants to make its heart beat, to run around, to breathe, to do everything that the body needs to do to stay alive. The remaining 10% that's not used actually gets converted into tissue, such as muscle or fat or skin. And when the secondary consumer here eats the primary consumer here, it's actually eating the 10% of the energy that made the tissue. So only 10% of that gets passed on to the secondary consumer, and so on and so forth. So that's what happens in the energy pyramid. As you go up, only 10% actually is made into meat or tissue for the next level, and 90% gets used up and lost as heat to the system. And this graphic actually has colors. You can see that the pink represents the energy that flows through the system. That means that this is the 10% that gets passed on to the next trophic level, and the blue represents the 90% of the energy that gets lost as heat or gets used up by the organism just to stay alive. So let's practice how we can use the 10% energy rule to calculate the amount of energy in each trophic level. You're going to have to be able to do this on the test, so this is very important. So if it helps you, I want to point out that this graphic uses abbreviation kcal. Kcal represents kilocalories right here. And kilocalories is a fancy way to say the word calorie. So this might be something that you're familiar with. A lot of times food has nutrition facts, and you can see how many calories the food has. And the higher the calories, the more energy that food has. So think of it in that way. So let's say that the bottom trophic level has 10,000 calories or 10,000 kilocalories available. So the grass captures sunlight, it has 10,000 kilocalories available. When the grasshopper eats the grass, it actually only gets 1,000 kilocalories from the grass, because only 10% of these kilocalories gets passed on to the grasshopper. So 10% of 10,000 is actually 1,000, and so that's why there's 1,000 here. And if you calculate 10% of 1,000, it would be 100, and so the frog only actually gets 100 calories from each grasshopper because 90% of the 1,000 calories that was in the grasshopper gets used up by the grasshopper to stay alive, and so on and so forth. So that's how you can use the 10% energy rule to calculate how much energy is available in each trophic level. And there will be questions where that I will ask you saying, okay, how much energy gets passed on to trophic level number 2? So just know how to calculate that, okay? So here's a really important concept. You now know that as you go up the trophic level pyramid, the amount of energy decreases, okay? Because 90% of the energy gets lost in each level and only 10% gets passed on. And this pyramid represents that in a nice shape. Because of that, there can't be a lot of tertiary consumers or predators or carnivores. There's just not enough energy at the top of the pyramid to be able to sustain a large number of carnivores. And that's why in the world there aren't billions of sharks or billions of, tigers. There's very few in those ecosystems of the top predators because there's just not enough energy to be able to fully support each one. And that's why we have a lot of producers at the bottom. So the number of producers is actually the highest in any ecosystem, and the second highest number are the primary consumers or the herbivores, and then the secondary consumers, and then the fewest in number are the tertiary consumers. Okay. Now I would like for you to quickly check your understanding. Read this question and let's see if you understand the overall concept behind trophic levels. So, number 1, approximately how much energy gets lost when energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next? Is it 10%, 80%, 90%, or 20%? Go ahead and make your choice. The correct answer is 90%. 90% is the amount that gets lost. Lost meaning gets used up by the organism just to stay alive. 2. How much energy gets transferred from one trophic level to the next? Is it 10%, 80%, 90%, or 20%? Go ahead and make your choice. The correct answer is 10%. Remember, only 10% of the energy gets transferred, and that's why the pyramid is really small at the top and really wide at the bottom. Number 3. Why are there more producers than carnivores? Is it because there is not enough energy to support the carnivores at the top of the pyramid because so much energy is lost? Or is it because there are too many producers and not enough herbivores to eat them to balance out the pyramid? The correct answer is A. There is not enough energy to support the carnivores at the top of the pyramid because so much energy is lost. Remember that in the pyramid here, wrong one. In the pyramid here, you can see at the very top, because so many kilocalories are lost, there's only 1 kilocalorie available per hawk, whereas down here there's 10,000. So as you move up, there's less and less energy, and so there's not enough energy to support a ton of hawks. All right, and last question, number 4. If there is 1,000 kilocalories of energy in the secondary consumers, how much energy gets transferred to the tertiary consumers? Is it 1 kilocalorie, 10 kilocalories, 100 kilocalories, or 1,000 kilocalories? Go ahead and make your choice. The correct answer is C, 100 kilocalories. Remember, the secondary consumers only transfer 10% of 1,000 to the tertiary. So 10% of 1,000 is 100. And that's it. Make sure that if you didn't answer the questions correctly, that you go back and rewatch the video or you review your notes, because it's very important that you understand these concepts for the test.